What's going on, guys? Hey, we are back. We're gonna have this is kind of different because I think this is gonna be a funny video, believe it or not. This is a Cappy Army video, brand new, and it is about Russia's dumbest military mistakes. Now, we have seen so many of these mistakes, and I haven't seen this Cappy's video yet. Like I said, it just came out, but it's just happened to be that there is a brand new viral video of a Russian mobile drone team in action here. So I want to show you this real quick. So a lot of you guys have probably seen this if you follow me on other social medias. So they go on to yell curse words and stuff, but let's just one more time. Bro. Anyways, that is just an intro to, and this could be in Cappy's video. I scanned it and I didn't see it. I think this is too new, but they both came out right around the same time, so maybe it is. Anyways, Russia's made a lot of blunders in the military sphere. These things happen. There's military fails, and every single military in the world, even the best and brightest, most elite units in the world, have fails, right? But Russia's tend to go on a bit of a viral journey once they happen. So this is going to be funny, man. I'm excited to watch this. Please check out Cappy. We love Cappy on this channel. Also, we have our new t-shirts that are in the merch store till the end of the month. It's the Flamingos Over Moscow t-shirt. Really, really cool. One of you guys sent me a photo with your t-shirt. It just arrived, and you're out to dinner with your wife, just having a meal and rocking the t-shirt, dude. It made me so happy. I think that's so cool. So if you want one, link in description. Discord link in description. Uncensored videos link in description. Let's go.
Of Russia's special military operation, and things are going just perfectly exactly. We're officially in year 4 of Russia's special military operation, and things are going just perfectly exactly to plan. Despite the stunning success of Russia's campaign to destroy Ukraine's drone forces by intercepting them with oil refineries, there have been some hiccups in 2026.
Hold on.
These are intercepting them with
Sorry, the audio's way down.
oil refineries. There have been some hiccups. Destroy Ukraine's drone exactly to plan. Despite the stunning success of Russia's campaign to destroy Ukraine's drone forces by intercepting them with oil refineries, there have been some hiccups in 2026. These are some of Russia's dumbest mistakes this year so far. First, we're starting off with that age-old question pondered by military strategists and philosophers dating back to the very dawn of warfare. What air defense doing? Well, it turns out that Russian air defense is doing a lot, but unfortunately for them, it's often the wrong thing. During the Cold War, the Soviets invested heavily, specifically in their ground-based air defense systems, fielding the world's largest number, in order to offset against the American air power advantage. It's a fact that Russia's very proud of. Today, though, Ukraine uses those same air defense systems to shoot down Russian aircraft. Refusing to be second to anyone, though, Russian air defense began shooting down their own Russian aircraft at an alarming rate, scoring high points in the Blue Falcon Olympics. It's difficult to get a clear number given that Russia's not exactly keen on admitting it's shooting down its own planes, but to date, it's believed that as many as 12 strike aircraft and 6 helicopters have been Blue Falcon and blown out of the sky by their own guys. In March of 2026, Russian air defense made the giant mistake of shooting down yet another Russian helicopter as it was responding to a Ukrainian drone raid. In an attempt to fix this, Russian forces are now making yet another mistake by increasingly concentrating their best air defense systems in Moscow and around Putin's personal residences and official government buildings, while oil depots, bridges, and rail lines keep exploding in the meantime. Russia drastically removed air defense systems from key areas and then repositioned them. In Moscow region alone, they've amassed hundreds of launchers. Nearly 90 launchers have been redeployed from other regions of Russia. It's the anywhere but the face strategy. The problem for Russia appears to be an inability to do something that military planners call airspace deconfliction. And this is a major mistake. Air operations are a delicate ballet of offense and defense, where the goal is to leverage your air power against an adversary while defending against their own. Somewhere in the mix, your own aircraft have to be able to safely operate within your own air defense envelope without getting shot down. I'm looking at you, Kuwait. This careful coordination is known as deconfliction, and it's Russia's next biggest mistake of 2026. Russia never has been particularly good at deconfliction because on at least one recent occasion, Russian air defense systems appeared to have defected and joined Ukraine. It was the blast memed around the world when on June 18th, in the Moscow region, a Russian air defense missile on its way to down a Ukrainian drone changed its mind. Veering wildly off course, the Russian missile streaked across the sky and appears to have impacted a large Russian fuel tank instead. The event produced a secondary meme explosion across the internet, but it also fueled anger and speculation across Russia on why their own air defense systems seem to be doing as much damage as Ukraine's drones. The answer may be a drop in quality in Russian weapon components since the start of the war, as well as reliance on older stockpile of missiles. As you know, missiles, they go bad just like milk in the fridge. A Ukrainian analysis of Caliber missiles debris found that Russia had been trying to offset its inability to import Western components by designing things domestically during 2023 and 2024, but quickly changed course when quality proved lacking. Ukrainian Ministry of Defense experts noted that domestically produced components likely reduced the accuracy of Russia's cruise missiles, prompting a switch back to more costly and difficult to acquire Western and Chinese components. Nobody but Russia knows how far into the supply chain inferior domestic components may have gotten during those 2 years that they were being produced, but it's likely that they made their way into the highest priority systems, including air defense interceptors. A black market faulty seeker or microprocessor may be to blame for the most meme-worthy explosion of 2026. One of Russia's biggest mistakes in 2026.
Sorry, guys. I know it looks like I'm distracted. The cats are scrapping. I had to take Brew to the vet today. She's got a, I don't know, but she'll be all right. Anyways, we've seen these surface-to-air missiles, Russia's surface-to-air missiles, strike Russian territory and Russian civilian infrastructure, military assets numerous times since the full-scale invasion started. So besides this most recent one with the fuel tank, the most prevalent one I remember was there was a big drone attack, and it was early this year, early 2026, in one of Russia's port cities on some of their ships and the dock area. Anyways, they launched a surface-to-air missile, Russia did, just directly into a apartment building, dude. And on the video, it's so absurd. It's so we've seen this, man.
Is their military has continued to fight like armored vehicles still dominate the battlefield. And there are now even new reports this year of tank crews abandoning their vehicles on the front line because they're running out of fuel. After the tank was captured, Ukrainian forces took a look at it, just hooked some fuel into it, and sent it on its merry way to the brigade's repair unit. There, the vehicle was fully serviced and adapted for their kind of fight, like how in Command & Conquer when you capture the enemy unit and turn it to your own team. During the Cold War, Soviet doctrine envisioned massive columns of tanks punching through NATO defenses by the hundreds. Today, those same armored formations are lucky if they can make a few kilometers before somebody wearing Crocs smoking a vape launches an FPV drone at them. Russian tanks are increasingly being parked several kilometers behind the front, acting like extremely expensive and inaccurate artillery pieces. Many Russian tank crews lob high explosive shells from concealed positions before quickly relocating. Russian tank warfare in 2026 is defined by a severe depletion of their Cold War era stockpiles, as much as 70%. Moscow's operational tempo is heavily constrained by these equipment shortages. This has prompted a strategic shift from massive mechanized breakthroughs to localized, highly vulnerable infantry advances. Even the infantry has adapted in ways that would have sounded ridiculous 3 years ago. Assault groups increasingly move on motorcycles, civilian vehicles, or horseback because a column of armored vehicles has become one of the easiest targets imaginable for Ukrainian drone operators. A drone team hiding in a tree line can wipe out millions of dollars worth of armored vehicles before the infantry even reach the first trench. Russia spent decades building one of the largest armored forces on Earth, only to discover that the most dangerous anti-tank weapon is a guy named Alexander, who's like 18 years old with some VR-style goggles, 3 non-stop energy drinks, and a backpack full of homemade drones. It's the obsession wish monkey paw, where you wish for the biggest tank army, but boom, monkey paw, the tank army isn't the quality you need anymore. And to that point of drop of quality, in 2026, Russia started to lose its electronic warfare superiority, which was a big mistake. Early in the war, their EW could shut down Ukrainian drones easily, but by 2026, they made the error of allowing Ukraine to adapt and gain the advantage here. Analysts believe sanctioned electronics are the reason for the fall behind in EW. The Russian Air Force in 2026 had to constantly relocate their strategic bomber fleet after repeatedly being struck by Ukrainian long-range fires recently. Russia started scattering their Tu-95s and Tu-160s all across the country, which has led to longer sortie times and maintenance crews spread thin. Some aircraft end up parked at bases that were never intended for regular bomber operations. But not to be outdone, Russia's Air Force were quick to strike back against themselves. In the first few months of 2026, independent sources confirmed that at least 25 Russian bombs were dropped either inside Russia itself or in occupied Ukrainian territories. By aircraft that were Russia itself, at least 25 Russian bombs were dropped either inside Russia itself or in occupied Ukrainian territories. By aircraft that were supposed to be targeting Ukrainian forces. According to independent Russian outlet Astra, this is par the course, with 143 bombs dropped on their own friendly territory in 2025 and at least 165 bombs dropped in 2024. This was a major mistake. These are independently verified reports, meaning that the real figure is likely significantly higher. American JDAM bombs have a circular error probable of about 5 meters. That's the distance that a JDAM can miss its intended target by 50% of the time. Russian bombs, on the other hand, appear to have a circular error probable of 1 entire country as a unit of measurement. Russia's Air Force may have a problem with dropping their load prematurely, a perfectly normal problem that can happen to anyone, but specifically if you wear that thing that I like, so technically it's your fault, not mine. From fighters and bombers, though, to call sign Fighter Bomber, he's one of Russia's most popular Z bloggers. He's kind of like me, except my bizarro evil twin version. With the Kremlin enacting total control over Russian mainstream media, many people turn to online bloggers for more accurate reporting. Of course, these Z bloggers still operate under a heavy veil of self-censorship, knowing very well that they might have a window-related accident if they don't, but Fighter Bomber has risen to prominence as one of the most popular Z bloggers. While he remains anonymous, Ukrainian OSINT open source intelligence accounts are confident that they identified him as Ila Borovich Tumanov, a former military aviation officer who was likely a navigator rather than fighter pilot. His close contacts to Russian aviation has led to him consistently releasing accurate information on aviation developments, aircraft losses, and general conditions within the Russian aerospace forces. But on the evening of June 20th, Fighter Bomber made a huge mistake when he posted on Telegram saying, quote, "Word from the hall says fuel has arrived in Crimea a lot," end quote. Just hours later, Ukraine struck Crimea's fuel infrastructure, hitting targets on both sides of the Kerch Bridge, with the primary targets being a depot on the Russian-occupied side. And the fuel logistics facilities at Port Kavkaz on Russia's side of the bridge, the attack was extremely successful, resulting in Crimea occupation authorities barring civilians from purchasing fuel amid limited supplies, so that it could be ready for military use. The backlash was immediate, with Fighter Bomber being the target of accusations by the Z Mill blogger community that he had been responsible for the attack. For his part, Fighter Bomber released a statement deflecting blame and instead claiming that his statement had been a generality that would have made precise targeting impossible. There's just one problem with that deflection, though. There's only so many places in Crimea that has a large amount of fuel that could be stored, processed, and distributed from. You don't have to have top secret access to CIA database to figure out where.
No, I mean, you could probably type into Grok or ChatGPT right now. If Crimea were to get X amount of gallons of fuel to arrive right now, where would they store it? And I bet you AI could figure that out right now.
Crimea's fuel logistics facilities are located. We literally Googled that ourselves and we're able to find it. You can tell that Fighter Bomber never had to give up any of his Saturday mornings or afternoons every 6 months for that biannual OPSEC training. But if he had, he might have known better than to give away the fact that a critical war fighting resource, fuel, had been delivered to a location with extremely limited handling and distribution facilities at a time that Ukraine was waging its most intense campaign to turn Russia into a renewable energy superpower by destroying literally all their gasoline. For his efforts in helping Ukraine turn Russia green, the first separate unmanned systems center in Ukraine, the unit that's responsible for the most painful strikes against Russian energy, awarded fighter bomber their coveted Employee of the Month award. Many mill bloggers were actually once infantry, but are no longer really on the front lines anymore. And Russia's next dumbest mistake of 2026 is that they've burned through their S-tier fighters. This new video, dropped by the Russian Ministry of Defense, shows how their infantry are yet again trying a new tactic to adapt to losses in 2026. According to Forbes
Dude, the amount of trolling that happens in this war is incredible.
magazine, Russian soldiers attempt to infiltrate through...
I mean, real trolling like that. That's funny, right? Or when that one admiral, the Russian admiral, was assassinated, and it came out that it was because of his the app that you use to track your runs. They're like public runs. You can share your public run route. And one of the Ukrainian officials, I forget, was it Budanov? I don't remember, but he liked the posted running route that this admiral had posted after they assassinated him, because they knew where to find him every single night at the same time.
Kill zones in a small group trying to get around Ukrainian held positions. This we know, but the new part is that then once they are forward deployed, these infiltration sites are used to establish a kind of localized air superiority, meaning very, very local, like your town local, except it's drone superiority. They're trying to establish what are called drone corridors. Then Russian infantry tried to assault Ukrainian positions with small units attacking from different directions under the cover of drone support. It's a bold strategy that has not yet worked in 2026. Wars consume equipment as much as they consume experience. One of Russia's biggest mistakes this year has been repeatedly throwing some of its best trained units into battles that offer very little strategic payoff. The type of soldiers who could have made their new tactics work have already been burned through. Units like their elite VDV airborne forces are seen fighting like ordinary mechanized infantry that are sent grinding through trench systems one tree line at a time. It would be like deploying Delta Force on guard tower duty, a total waste of $40,000 worth of quad nods. These units were originally designed for sabotage and behind enemy lines work. Now, Russian naval infantry are also committed to costly assaults where elite training doesn't really matter all that much. It's more of a roll of the dice if artillery or FPV drone strike hits you. The result is that Russia often loses something much harder to replace than any metal or equipment. They lose experienced officers. It's difficult to mass produce 10 years of battlefield experience. In 2026, this has created a vicious cycle. Heavy casualties force Russia to accelerate recruitment, but new soldiers receive less training before arriving at the front. They are increasingly foreign mercenaries, brought in with little training. Each assault is chipping away at their institutional knowledge that has been built over decades. The fight on the ground is just as important as the fight in the Skynet on computers, though. But Russia's cyberspace has long been a thorn in its own side. It's another major mistake here, with regulators attempting to crack down on various apps across Russia in a bid to control information and contain dissent. In 2024, Russia made an unforced self-own when they cracked down on the popular Discord messaging platform, and the move sparked widespread protests because of battlefield consequences. Incredibly, Russia's military was heavily utilizing Discord to communicate and even control drones. Live UAV feeds were transmitted via Discord to Russian headquarters elements, allowing senior officers to coordinate troops during assault operations. These same live feeds were used to correct artillery fire, while units down to the squad level used it for communications. It's kind of impressive that while the US military has Link 16, Russia uses the same app that millions log on to for commissioning NSFW Pokemon art. But at the same point, a random senior Russian military leader remembered his OPSEC training and decided that running the entire military via an American commercial application was Probably not a war-winning move, and thus the ban was instigated. The fallout was immediate though, with Russian drone operations faltering for weeks as they desperately searched for an alternative. Well,
Yeah, you would have a redundancy plan in place for when you cancel that, for when you stop that strategy, stop using Discord.
in 2026, Russia decided to revisit some of its own greatest hits and move forward with a gradual Telegram ban. The messaging app is one of the most popular in Russia and is used by everyone from military bloggers to government officials to, you guessed it, regular military units for command and control. It's not an outright ban, not yet, but instead a more gradual throttling of traffic in order to force the app to bend the knee to Russian demands. It's also not new because in 2018, Russia tried to outright ban the app because it was refusing to share encryption keys with their internal security, the FSB. During the ban, though, not only were regular Russian citizens still using the app, but so were many government agencies that led to a revoking of the ban in 2020. Then in late summer of 2025, Russia's chief communications agency began a gradual throttling of Telegram while pushing Max, a state-developed and government-sanctioned messaging app that was directly tied to Russian security services. It's basically, you don't need Telegram because we have Telegram at home. The goal was to fully replace all Western and Chinese messaging platforms with a purely Russian one, controlled by the Russian government and existing on Russian servers. Unsurprisingly, Max failed to become particularly popular, forcing the government to continue throttling access to Telegram. By late spring of 2026, many users were having difficulty loading anything into the Telegram app from inside Russia without a VPN or proxy. Russian citizens were getting stuck on loading screens as the government continued to pressure Telegram to comply with its demands, painting Telegram as a hybrid Ukrainian NATO threat. The Kremlin led with the narrative that Telegram made the Russian military vulnerable to foreign spying and Russian people to Western propaganda. Ironically, it would be the Russian government soft ban that did actual harm to the Russian military and to its own propaganda efforts. Russian soldiers have used Telegram to share photographs and recon imagery directly. Drone pilots were able to use the app to speak directly to artillery units and correct fires live. At the unit level, logistics personnel used group chats to manage equipment and vehicle repairs, delivery of spare parts, and the movement of personnel. On the propaganda front, Telegram is just as critical to the war effort, allowing Russian propagandists to gain access to global audiences. Popular Russian propagandist and editor-in-chief of RT, a Russian state-controlled publication, Margarita Simonyan, lost almost half her Telegram following due to throttling. A particular spicy poisoned apple, Simonon has been one of the most influential propagandists in modern Russian history, helping RT establish a global media presence that the Telegram ban was threatening to undermine. Even official Putin mouthpiece Dmitry Peskov warned that the Russian government was hurting its own efforts to influence a global audience. Speaking at a technology and media conference held at Moscow's Higher School of Economics, Peskov warned that Moscow's refusal to engage with Western and Chinese-owned social media apps was threatening to isolate the Kremlin's preferred narrative. Of particular concern was the ability to influence the Commonwealth of Independent States, a group consisting of former Soviet republics turned independent nations. We don't work with Telegram, so how are we supposed to get our message across? We will have to figure that out, said Peskov. The answer appears to be the Russian-developed Max app, which by legal decree comes installed on every single smartphone and tablet sold within Russia, like a U2 album. It's like if the US government banned every other app and pre-installed Snapchat into your device, forcing you to communicate exclusively through cute cat filters. But as usual, Russia is cutting off its own nose to spite its face. Since the February slowdown of Telegram, battlefield units have reported an inability to coordinate drones with artillery or command headquarters. While text messages can still get through the throttling due to the low bandwidth, the photos, videos, and large files have become virtually impossible to share. Even worse though, many units are being forced to use alternative means of communications, leading to a rise in the use of unsecure cell phones and civilian radios. This may not be a surprise considering at the start of the war, Russian strategic bombers were flying missions using unencrypted civilian radios to communicate. What? One time I got yelled at for saying okay instead of Roger over the radio, and Russia's over here flying strategic bombers with freaking Amazon walkie-talkies? The fallout is also hitting Russia's mill bloggers hard though, and they have been some of the loudest voices against the ban. As audiences are increasingly unable to access their channels, viewership plummets, and with it, so does Russia's ability to shape domestic and global narratives about the war. The Kremlin finds itself between a rock and a hard place. Z-bloggers are given a degree of independence because their global reach is beneficial to Russian narratives, but the app that they use to communicate is also used to ferment dissent within Russia. An element that the Kremlin may not have considered about its Telegram ban is also its use in fundraising operations. Like Ukraine, the Russian military also relies heavily on civilian fundraising for basic necessities like vehicles, drones, body armors, and dildos. You heard that right. Back in 2023, Ukrainian hacktivists broke into the online account of a Russian military fundraiser and used linked funds meant to purchase killer drones to instead buy $25,000 worth of dildos. The victim was Mikhail Luchin, friend of infamous Z-blogger Valden Tarsky, who was killed by Ukrainian security service personnel in a cafe explosion in St. Petersburg. He's a war criminal, volunteer blogger, and now dildo owner, said the Ukrainian hackers. If volunteers wish to provide more dildos to the Russian military, they'll have to find an alternative means of doing so after the ban. And that's no easy feat, given that Telegram offered a global audience and thus a global pocketbook. The current alternative, Max, is being pushed hard, not just on Russians, but in surrounding countries even. But efforts don't seem particularly encouraging. Russia recently celebrated its 100 millionth registered account, but provided no info on how many of these accounts are from outside of Russia, how many are bots, and how many are honest-to-God fundraisers trying to supply their military with a fresh supply of battlefield dildos. Russia's next biggest mistake in 2026 is that despite 4 years of war, it still hasn't solved one of the oldest problems in military history: logistics. Russia inherited one of the largest rail-based military logistics systems on Earth from the Soviet Union. That system was designed specifically to move enormous amounts of equipment toward Ukraine, and that was a huge advantage as well. But it moves through static, predictable hubs. During the Cold War, it was a strength. In the drone age, it's increasingly becoming a huge liability. Ukraine now looks for easy-to-attack bottlenecks. They hit fuel depots, they hit rail transfer stations, they blow up ammo warehouses in fireballs so big that they look like nuclear explosions. They collapse bridges and they take out innocent-looking ferries. These are the places where thousands of tons of supplies have no choice but to pass through. It's the principle of shutting down one bridge during rush hour and suddenly the entire city is late for work. That's exactly what's happening to Russian logistics. Yeah. Every time Ukraine destroys a fuel depot, Russian commanders have to haul fuel from further away. Together, these strikes create friction, and modern militaries absolutely hate friction. That's why Russia has spent much of 2026 constantly relocating depots further from the front. The supplies are still arriving, but they just take much longer, and they cost more money and require more trucks to get there. Each logistics mission burns more fuel, and creates even more opportunities for Ukrainian drones to find them.
Dude, can you just take a minute and think in, let's say, January, February of 2022, when all of this, when things are coming to a head with Russia, and they are planning their final operations to full-scale invade Ukraine. Everybody, patriotism's high in Russia. The people, at least the military that knows it's happening, everybody thinks, man, it's going to be a quick get in, get out operation. 5 years later, you're now losing the war. The number 2 superpower in the world is losing the war to a nation that wasn't even on the top 50 list of superpowers. Wow. How embarrassing.
Death by 1,000 paper drones.
And while all of this is happening, you've only managed to strengthen ties in NATO, strengthen your enemy, Ukraine, and worsen your relationships with your other global enemies like the United States and Europe.
Russia made the mistake of believing they could turn off the lights in Ukraine, which would eventually then throw in the towel. On paper, it probably looked like a smart idea. If you destroy enough power plants, enough substations, if you knock out enough transformer yards, and eventually the economy grinds to a halt. If I'm a Russian general, it sounds like it's time for me to get super overconfident with a plan that good. This would, in theory, mean that factories would stop producing, all of your trains would just stop moving, possibly the civilians would become exhausted, and then that's when political pressure would mount. and it might have worked. But the problem is that Ukraine anticipated this sociopathic level attack and has spent years now preparing for exactly this scenario. Throughout 2026, Russia continued large-scale missile and drone strikes against Ukraine's energy system in these coordinated raids. Yet Ukraine's electrical grid has proven far more resilient than Moscow or really anyone would have anticipated. Now, why is that? Because engineers often restore damaged substations in just a few days. Mobile gas turbines and decentralized generation and imported electricity from European neighbors and thousands of backup generators have made it much harder to knock a country offline for very long. Every prepper watching this just felt super vindicated by this information. See, I told you having 900 cans of beans is normal, and it is, and that's why I have them in my basement. Many were surprised to see no single giant power grid smashed with a sledgehammer. So Ukraine has gradually turned its energy system into something closer to a 12-headed hydra. If you knock out one piece, several others keep functioning. It's difficult to intimidate a country that has an electrician on speed dial. I'll have to ask my favorite fat electrician if that all checks out and if that information is accurate. Russia has also paid an increasingly steep price for these attacks. Every major strike consumes expensive precision-guided weapons that take a lot of time to replace. Even with expanded production of their drones, saturation attacks like this require enormous stockpiles and careful planning. Those are missiles that can't be used elsewhere. You can't attack Ukraine's military headquarters, the logistics hubs, or frontline targets that they'd normally be used for. So Russia's wasting a ton of their best weapons on attacking the city of Kyiv just in an attempt to terrorize them. Pretty lame. The biggest miscalculation here was that Moscow just assumed civilians would eventually conclude that the war wasn't worth it after these blackouts. Something that every Air Force officer has dreamed since World War II is that their fancy planes can end the war. It didn't. Instead, repeated attacks largely reinforced Ukrainian determination to continue fighting. After years of adapting, many communities now treat power outages more like an inconvenient Tuesday. When I was there, power went off just periodically throughout the day and people just went on business as usual. The campaign has certainly imposed real costs though. Homes have gone dark, you see business lose revenue, and critical infrastructure has definitely been damaged. But if the strategic objective was forcing Ukraine into capitulation, then the scoreboard remains pretty stubbornly unimpressed. Russia has spent billions of dollars trying to unplug a country that just keeps finding another extension cord. Now, let's talk about Russia's 2026 economic woes and mistakes. Turns out that while lucrative in peacetime, specializing your entire economy around energy is a great way to give your adversaries a single lever to pull in order to cripple you. Russia's federal budget has always been heavily dependent on oil and natural gas, making up as much as 30% of all federal revenue in 2024 and down to 23% in 2025. That's not a sign of diversification though, but rather the economic toll of sanctions and Ukraine's long-range green energy strikes. With Russia's all-important oil and gas sectors under siege by the world's most aggressive renewable energy campaign, you'd think that the Kremlin would be cutting companies already barely making a profit due to sanctions a break. And you'd be wrong, because this is Russia. In May 2026, a Russian court threw out an insurance claim worth 140 million rubles, or nearly $2 million, after a drone attack on an oil depot in Krasnodar. The drone was, as always, successfully intercepted, only for debris to cause oil tanks to spontaneously explode as that happens. That's totally normal. The Russian oil depot owners got a taste of what it's like to be an American when they went to their insurance, said that they'd been paying their premium for years only to have their claim denied. Initially, a local court sided with the owners and ordered the insurer to pay up, only for the insurance company VSK to file an appeal at a higher court. The appeals court judge quickly issued her decree stating there was no state of war in the Russian Federation, there were no military actions as defined in the resolution of the Supreme Court of the Russian Federation in the Krasnodar territory. The judge ruled that because there was no state of war, the attack had been of a terrorist nature and thus exempt from coverage by insurance.
Wow.
Her decision was protested, but with Putin not declaring a legal state of war, the plaintiff had no ground to stand on and coverage was denied. And you know what? It's nice to see women getting a chance to be mouthpieces for a corrupt, despotic government. Hashtag girl power. Ladies, you can do anything, including being stooges for a tin pot dictator. But the Kremlin isn't blind to the needs of its private companies, and in May allowed private companies to purchase heavy air defense equipment, including large caliber weapons, anti-aircraft artillery, radar, road transportation equipment, and electric warfare assets. However, just because they buy it doesn't mean that they get to keep it. Perhaps with memories of Prigozhin still echoing the halls of the Kremlin, all this
the leader of Wagner.
heavy-duty firepower is then legally transferred straight to the military, where it's manned by reservists. So in a way, private companies aren't so much buying air defense equipment to defend themselves as they're donating it to the Russian military. And then that military is under no specific obligation to actually use the equipment to defend the companies that bought it, as evidenced by the recent order by Putin to move Russian air defenses so that they're concentrated around Moscow and other key sites.
Dude, what a sham this entire country is, man. They refuse to or to abide by the insurance claims when there's damage done to these major energy facilities because of the war, by trying to use a loophole that this is a special military operation and not a war, so it doesn't fall under the insurance war claims. And then they come up with a plan where they will allow these big fuel companies and other companies, if they want defense, they can buy it. They can buy these vehicles and this EW equipment and stuff like that. But if the Russian military needs it, they're going to take it. What a sham, this country.
It's sort of like if you're...
Dude, I swear, mopeds and motorcycles should be banned in Ukraine. Everything sounds like a mother effing drone.
Business kept getting robbed, so the government said, no problem, just buy yourself a vicious guard dog. And then you bought that dog, and the government came by later and said, okay, thanks.
Oh
and then they took it so they could guard a random mayor's mansion instead. In Russia...
That's enough. If someone did that to me and I was down there like on the street, I would fire off on someone, not like with a rifle, but I would want to fight that person. Oh my God, that scared me.
The system just works. But I think the dumbest mistake Russia made in all of 2026 was not building enough mid-range strike drones quick enough. It's an interesting procurement oversight. They invested billions of more dollars into tank production, helicopters, cruise missiles, but they failed to invest in mid or long-range strike drones at the same pace. Meanwhile, Ukraine built hundreds of thousands of these. Russia prepared for World War III by bringing a knife to a gunfight, or I think that's how the analogy goes. But Russia was actually the first to heavily invest in long-range drones, but they failed to double down on them. This has so far been due to a combination of historical military doctrine and severe supply chain limitations. Historically, the Russian military prioritized investing in heavy, manned aviation and long-range cruise missiles rather than unmanned systems. The lack of a strong domestic microelectronics industry and strict export controls left Russia heavily reliant on imported, Western-made components for navigation and guidance systems for their long-range drones. They couldn't scale up quickly enough with those limitations, though. Whether this mistake will continue into 2027 or not, we've yet to see. 2026 is halfway over, and Russia's already making more mistakes than it need to financing a sick 2016 Mustang at 30% APR to impress a stripper. While Zelensky just giving the green light for an intense 40-day campaign against Moscow and other major Russian cities, we're confident that there's plenty more dumb mistakes to come from the second most powerful military inside of Ukraine. I'm your average infantryman, Chris Cappy. Thank you for...
Russia's the second most powerful military inside of Ukraine, where there's only two militaries, the Ukrainian military and the Russian military. Oh God, what a good video, dude. I haven't laughed that much at a video talking about Russia in a long time. Good stuff, Cappy. Please go show some love on his video. This is a longer video than I expected, so thank you guys for everybody who stuck around. Please like, share, subscribe, not only to Cappy stuff, but this video as well. It means a lot. If you want a t-shirt, link in description. Discord, link in description. I love you guys. We'll see you all these hand gestures. Huge. All right, I love you guys. Peace.